Good morning. This is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of Nonprofit Utopia. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Wherever you are, if you could take the time to introduce yourself in the comment section, let us know who you are, where you're from. If you have any questions about nonprofits, specifically fundraising questions. Today, we're going to focus on nonprofit fundraising, and we're going to look at it at a different angle. We tend to have, a more traditional approach where we're looking at, how much funding we can get from the government, how much funding we can get from individuals, how much funding we can get from, say, foundations, right? Typically, if you're like most nonprofit leaders, even if you do all the right things the right way, the way we've been taught traditionally in nonprofit, you can come up short, even if you have, earned income strategies, right? Which tend to be a little bit more restricted. Today, we're going to talk about a different approach. We're going to look at ways that you can transition from traditional fundraising models, right, to actually focusing on holistic financing models. And our guest today is Sherry Quam Taylor. She is the founder of QuamTaylor, and she is going to tell us a little bit about herself, how she got started in business, and then we will actually, ask her some deep questions about her approach and what she thinks about nonprofit. So, without further ado, I am going to let Sherry come to us in her own way, give us a little bit of background about herself, and then we'll go forward.
Thanks,
Right?
Valerie. I appreciate the intro and the warning that you're going to drill me, but I welcome that. Well, thanks. I'm Sherry Quam Taylor, as Valerie said, and yeah, I grow nonprofits, and I help nonprofits who are growing but want to grow more. And so my background, I started, a corporate career. Sometimes I don't know how I got over on this side, but I'm here and I'm happy about it.
You're on
And
the
so
bright side.
I'm on the bright side. Yeah, I'm on the bright side. And so I, was working, scaling, growing, with the company that I was working for, and became one of those Uber volunteers for an organization I was passionate about,
Awesome.
and eventually joined that organization and had success scaling it pretty quickly. And after about 3 years with the organization, I said, I had a lot of EDs coming to me or fundraisers coming to me saying, like, how are you guys doing that? How are you scaling so quickly? And I really think that it was my objectivity. It was the fact that, whatever it is now, 14, 15 years ago, I didn't have a nonprofit background. So I was just really curious. And I was like, why would we do it that way? Why shouldn't we do it this way? And so I think I brought a lot of my sales expertise and business expertise, and it really lit my entrepreneurial spirit. And
Hmm.
so I started my own organization or my own company. I think this is my 10-year anniversary. I
Woohoo!
know, even if it's 9, which sometimes I'm like, wait, is it 9? Is it 10? I've been doing this for 10 years, scaling organizations, and specifically scaling their general operating revenue, their unrestricted revenue, so that they can turn around and invest that into growth in their own organization. And so the leaders I work with are killing it. They're growing, but they do feel like maybe they still are leaving money on the table.
Hmm.
And they because you know for many different reasons that we'll talk
Right.
about today. But so I work with organizations all over the country on Zoom. Before Zoom was cool in 2020, um, and so that's really how I came to be Sherry Quam Taylor here.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. And before we, I guess, get down to the nitty gritty, I always like to start with the general and then drill down to the more
Sure.
specific. So I just want to have you, give us your take on what the fundraising landscape is like. Who are some of the players, I guess, in terms of nonprofits, and, where do they get their money from, and, what are some of the issues they're having and all that good stuff.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to answer that question really like here and now because I had this interesting moment, reflection, whatever I would call it, early this year when I started, excuse me, a few clients at the same time. And I realized, this is 2022. It's like, okay, we all high fives. We all made it through 2020, 2021.
Woo-hoo, yes, yes.
Woo-hoo. And shoulders back. Here we go. And I had people coming to me with different challenges, I guess, Valerie, is what I'm trying to say. I had organizations coming to me who were like, we just grew by millions these last few years. And now what does the future look like? Or, hey, we grew and it allowed us to think more expansive. It allows us to think about scaling in a different way or, virtual or that kind of thing. And so we've put a strategic plan in place to go from 2 million to 10 million. So I say that because I think there's this interesting moment right now where, despite how difficult the last few years have been for many organizations, so many actually are flush with cash, and they're really looking at it as an opportunity for growth and trying to be very wise about investing in their growth because they don't want to go back. Don't want to go back to scarcity mindset, barely making it by, struggling with payroll, too much restricted cash. And so how do we invest in the business we're running well so that we really have the strongest engine to kind of move into the future? So that's my favorite clients right now who really who are able to see this new problem as really something that is solvable, and they're embracing it. So I'm seeing so much of that right now, Valerie.
Okay, awesome. So I guess that COVID pandemic was really a blessing in disguise because it's forcing, I think, everybody to look at things differently. Funders are looking at different ways of funding, whereas, their timeline for funding might have taken 6 months, they've cut that down drastically.
Yeah.
And
I think that the opportunity is there's just a great opportunity, I think, to push against a lot of the old misconceptions or old ways we did things. The door is open, and I think I've told every nonprofit I've had the privilege of talking to these last couple of years, we had never needed you more. For pandemic and equity issues and everything that the world went through these last few years. My goodness, we could name 10 things. We never needed you more, and so I think we all realize that, and we all see that. Funders see that, donors see that. So push through the door and be different and be in these new shoes, and because we trust you. We're really trusting you. You led us through that.
Okay, great. And then, another question, and I know it seems totally, unrelated, but
that's
but
good. It all ties together, doesn't it? Really?
Yes, yes. So often we get confused, I think, with proposal writing versus fundraising, right? We kind of think they're the same thing, but they're really not. They're similar, but they're not. What's your take on proposal writing versus fundraising?
Yeah. Well, I'll also kind of come back to you starting high level and say, I look at this as, I guess traditionally we would look at it as more like transactional, relational. Doesn't mean we don't have relationships with the people we write proposals to. But the approach I take is really making sure that we are thinking through from a time allocation. And so if you're an organization who, I'll just use round numbers. I try not to do math on live podcasts. If you're an organization who says, we're at 3 million, we want to grow to 5 million, I'm a true believer in making sure that we know the exact path to the 5 million, and we know the exact path to our time allocation to the 5 million. Because where we get stuck, fundraisers come to me, you probably hear it all the time, Valerie, where it's like, I'd love to do all these things. I'd love to write more proposals. I'd love to do more relationship-based fundraising. But I don't have enough time. I'm wearing all the hats. So I want to make sure that we have a true, what I call, we'll talk about financing plan to like, well, what does it look like to be at that 5 million? What is the spend? What is the team? All the things that actually, the math that gets us to that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go back and look at your question and say, how much time should be spent on traditional fundraising, whether that's major gifts, mid-level gifts, more grassroots gifts? How much time should be spent on traditional proposal writing? The answer is we want it diverse, right? We want a nice breadth of
Mm-hmm.
giving. But what I find the challenges with this is it it feels easier to do the proposal writing. There's a
Yeah.
deadline, there's questions, we give answers,
Mm-hmm.
submit. Sometimes we get money. It feels like that is the way to the money when what I often see is that sometimes is holding organizations back from growing because too much time is put into that. And sometimes it's just because teams haven't been equipped. They've never had major gift training or mid-level gift training. And so it feels like the default should be proposals, events,
Mm-hmm.
campaigns, that kind of thing. So those terms in my mind are different because I'm kind of looking at my donor pyramid in my head to say, don't stop doing proposal writing, but are you laying the activities on top of it that actually is going to yield unrestricted gifts, yield larger general operating gifts or capacity building gifts?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I kind of look at that.
Okay. And what are some of the problems that you're seeing that people, come to you with? They have serious problems before you start working with them, and you do a great job
Yeah,
of helping them.
yeah. So people usually come to me a couple different reasons. Um, Sometimes it's like I said, it was like, wait, we grew, and now we're up here, and I don't know that I have like the team has grown at that scale. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that my team knows how to kind of keep up that momentum or move into more strategic fundraising. A lot of groups come to me who have put amazing strategic plans in place, a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they just aren't, the revenue's not there to do what's in their strategic plans, which is always like, oh, so heartbreaking because
Yeah.
we get so excited when we do a strategic plan and we learn about,
Mm-hmm.
all we vision and really set some plans in place. But if you do not have enough unrestricted revenue or enough general operating revenue to invest in that growth in your strategic plan, it can't just be programs. Um, you know, it's going to be hard to accomplish what's in it. So a lot of people come to me in that case. Last thing I'll say is I had a great leader, one of my favorite clients, come to me, and he's a CEO out of corporate, and is pivoted into running a nonprofit. And he heard me on a podcast like this, and he called me afterwards and he said, "There's something you said, and that's what's wrong with my organization." And I said, "Well, tell me what it is." And he said, "You asked, are your donors all giving their best gift to the organization?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "I have some great donors. I have people who have shown up for years, but they're all just kind of giving a gift. They're not giving their best gift. And I feel like there's so much money being left on the table." And so that's not a good feeling, to know that you guys are working so hard, but maybe the team or something's not quite gelling right, that you are leaving money on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And what I noticed when talking to you and reading your materials, you tend to take things that I guess we look at strengths and you take a different approach, not necessarily saying that they are no longer useful, but you really, I think, do a really great job of letting us know that, some of the things that we're counting on, taking for granted, and looking at as our saviors are not necessarily the end all be all.
Yeah.
And one of those it is like, the basic pillars of fundraising. We all think we need to get government contracts, right? We should have individual donors. We should have earned income, blah, 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 blah. Diversify our revenues.
All the things.
Yeah, but you call those culprits. Most of us would say these are the pillars.
Yeah,
you know,
we
of
do.
fundraising.
Uh, I do, and they are the pillars too. But I think what I mean by that is I do have so many people coming to me and like, okay, let's talk 2020 here. Oh my goodness, it's April. And all of a sudden it was this like, oh no, we've been too dependent on an event.
Yeah.
We've been too dependent on that one giant multi-year something that, oh, all of a sudden they are going over here and funding this. And so I look at them as culprits when we're way too dependent on one
Yes.
thing. So I would tell people, I'm not telling you don't apply for the government grant or don't do the event, or I'm not saying any of those things,
Right.
but it can't be the only thing. It really can't be. We can't be too dependent on it. And so for probably my pre 2021 clients, most people were coming to me because they're like, we're too dependent on name
Mm-hmm.
it, right? Earned revenue, any of the things. And so I always say, keep doing that. But you are leaving so much money on the table if you also don't have an individual giving strategy or what I would call a single source decision maker strategy. Those people who in May of 2020, you picked up the phone and said, hey, Chris, can we talk? You've got to have that direct dial with people. And so Valerie, I feel for people who are doing amazing work, but like they've had huge cash flow issues when, it might be, oh, we got a contract, from the government to do this program, but then we couldn't hardly do payroll because like payments were running late, or it's all restricted. And so yes, it's an amazing program, but like we're dying over here on the operations and fundraising side. And so just being too dependent on it is really this culprit that is keeping people from growing and keeping organizations from scaling.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So when you work with clients, and you help them with the financing plans, so to speak, are you also helping them put systems in place to support those plans?
Yeah, I think that it naturally becomes part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I guess I'm a fundraising consultant, but I'm always starting with like, okay, first let's talk through the strategic plan. Now, what's your approach to budgeting? How are we talking about your programs? All of these things that are how we it's the groundwork, or like in essence what's under the waterline of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we see at the top of the iceberg, cash flow or all the things we've talked about. And oftentimes the reason organizations aren't growing is because we aren't the business behind fundraising might actually be kind of blocking donors from understanding you need the money, or setting your team up to fail, or certainly not reach their goals that we want them to reach. And so I'm in the mindset, and my approach is really making sure we know what the true financial need is of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
No scarcity in my zone. And then we actually know how to finance the organization. What is the best way? What is the most diverse way? What is going to allow us to invest in growth? Are we spending enough on fundraising and admin and programs? First and foremost, we have to do that. We have to know the number we're raising to and how we would reach it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we worry about fundraising. Then that tells us, well, what fundraising activities should we do? Should we write more grant proposals? Should we continue that 5K? Should we add a spring appeal? That tells you what to do. That helps your hours align with dollars. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the step that I see most people skip, which is where I start. And it's usually the fix that really aligns that business, your
Mm-hmm.
strategic business objectives with your team and your revenue generation.
Right. So one of the things that I think you like to focus on too is, having people to, and when I say people, I'm talking about having funders to
Yeah.
finance the whole organization as opposed to just the programs. And I'm just wondering if in your approach you help people to prepare
Mhm.
for those conversations, with traditional funders who only want to deal with programs.
Yeah, you said it. Yeah, I to teach people to sell to that top line, right? Not just, another challenge is a lot of people come to me and it's like, we're kind of funding projects, 100K for this one, 200K for this one. And then of course, all those get funded. And then we're trying to figure out how to get general operating revenue or how to hire, internal staff. Like it doesn't make sense. So my approach really is selling, if you will, to that top line and helping my clients understand how do we lead donors through those conversations? How do we sit at the table and have those investment level conversations? How do we walk donors through the financials? How do we really educate them to really understand an unrestricted gift is the best impact that they could make on the organization? Now, are there going to be people who always want to fund projects and like want to touch and feel? Sure. And we'll respect that. So often, with certain tools in hand and really people learning how to lead donors to that best gift, lead them to that gift every year. Fundraisers have way more control of that pacing, that size, and that unrestriction than they think. So I see it all the time. I see the shift. I wish everybody could see the shifts I see made. That it's just a different skill set. And if you haven't ever, if you haven't learned it, then it is going to feel scary or feel kind of crazy. But it's not. Valerie, I was recording another podcast just a couple of days ago, and the question was kind of toned around general operating gifts, and it was phrased as like, they're the hardest gifts to get. So why are you focusing your business on it? I don't see them as the hardest gifts to get. Like I actually don't have that experience. There's a very specific playbook, to do this, to attract investment level donors and people who really understand what it takes to run and scale an organization, and that when they give to the overall organization, it actually helps grow programs, which is what we all want. It helps us invest more into programs.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just want to share with you a comment from Pierre Clark.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he says, this is interesting. Now, just so you know, you may know Pierre, but he and I are on the board of Social Enterprise Chicago together. And
great.
Also a member of the nonprofit Utopia community. Just want to say hi,
good.
Pierre.
Shout out to Pierre. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
This is your following, Valerie. I love it.
And Pierre, if you have any comments or questions, regarding business models for nonprofits and, how they can add to their fundraising, that would be awesome. And, Sherry is getting ready to let us know, why nonprofits should transition from the traditional fundraising model to a more holistic financing model.
Because I spill coffee on myself. So here's the shift that I really see organizations make and see it really, frankly, add 7 figures to their bottom line, which is always my goal with my clients.
Not 6, not 2 figures.
7. I want 7.
7.
7. That's what we're going for. And we need, like we said at the beginning of the hour, Valerie, we need organizations to have that cash. We need you. We need you, people who just served us so well these last few years. So often I find that we're busy, we're understaffed, all the things, and so we pivot right into here's a list of fundraising things we need to be doing, without really rooting it in, like we talked about, that true financing plan, without really rooting it in the organization's true financial need. And so I always want to make sure that we are aligning the activities of our fundraising to an overall model that is really aligns our hours with dollars. And so I tell every fundraiser, the number one asset, to the organization is your time. And so every hour you are spending fundraising, whether you're an ED, whether you're a board member, whether you're a fundraiser, if you are spending your precious time fundraising, we have to make sure that it is aligned with maximum results.
Right.
And so we really have to be constantly reflecting and critical of ourselves to say, why am I spending 3 months planning this one thing that yields $10,000? If I would have spent those 3 months with 5 donors and building those relationships, like that would have been $100,000 or, whatever. And so often when we jump to these are the fundraising things we should do that we see on webinars and on social media, and my friends do these. We're really starting the race before we've put the right running shoes on. So this concept of a financing plan and a model is a lot of work that I do so that EDs can know what should their board members be doing when it comes to fundraising. What should my team be doing? What should my team look like? Who's my next hire? They have to be able to do this line on my fundraising plan. And so it really is the math and like the meat behind your whole organization, really, and how everything touches revenue in your organization. And so I just am so passionate about that step. I think it gives people real clarity on time allocation, which is a fundraiser's most valuable asset, and also the thing that like they struggle with.
Right. So it sounds to me like an ideal time for people to actually hire you is when they're doing strategic planning, because it sounds to me like you're not just doing sales, and that's not to minimize the sales.
Of course.
Right. But it sounds like a whole shift in, just looking at the business from the top down and looking at ways that you can integrate the finance function throughout.
It's critical. A lot of people come to me when they just finished their strategic plan, which is cool too. If they're really visionary, like this group who I'm working with has said, we just made it to 2 million and we want to be to 10 million. Our strategic plan is to 10 million.
Awesome.
I was like, here we go, let's do this. So I would say that's a visionary leader who has a plan to scale, but they're not a fundraiser. In her case, she's an engineer. And so she's like, show me how to do it. Show me how to build a team that can do it. Show me how to equip my board to do it. So like that's, I would say, from a very abundant mindset, visionary leader who has a strategic plan. Sometimes it makes more sense to bring me in before strategic planning, or we're thinking of doing a strategic plan, because sometimes an organization needs help thinking more expansive. So often, maybe this is why I also call government grants and things culprits, maybe, is because so often organizations are saying, well, we have $3 million committed, so I guess we'll just plan for $3 million worth of like work, if you will. But we really need this, and we really need this, and we really want to continue this. So we can't be budgeting based on only what we have committed for the year. We really have to budget and plan and fundraise based on what our true need is. So often, sometimes when we're strategic planning, even we aren't thinking big enough, or we're not thinking what could be, because we're just in the work. We're just heads down doing the work, and it's hard work, and it's draining. And sometimes we need that objectivity to say, like, but our North Star is over there. And so we need to take some very strategic steps and spend some strategic money so that we can see the path to it.
Right.
So I have a partner I do a lot of partnering with, who is a strategic planner, and sometimes we come in together and say, let's put the plan in place, and I'll show you how to fund it. And it's critical, and that really attracts what I call investment level donors to really say, great, you have the plan for the impact, and you have the plan to fund it, and how can I be a part?
Okay, awesome. And I see that Audrey Dunford. Audrey, if you're still there, hello. Thank you so much.
Hi, Audrey. This is fun with the little pop-ups, Valerie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I love to engage people. Um, Audrey is a member of the nonprofit Utopia community, and she's
Good.
also going to be going through some capacity building on the R3 program. And for those who don't know what the R3 program is, there is a program, I guess, in the state of Illinois where tax dollars that come about as a result of cannabis sales are set aside for communities that are at high risk for, for violence. So we're
Mm,
going to be sharing with them, a number of ways that they can increase their capacity to develop programs that will qualify for R3 funding. And what she says is, this is very interesting. This is so needed. I just told LaShawn Ford this organization needs unrestricted funds and other streams of income. And for those who don't know who LaShawn Ford is, he's one of our senior legislators from the west side of Chicago. Um, and he has been very instrumental. He listens very well to grassroots organizations, and I would not be surprised if after another conversation with Audrey, he starts picking up the mantle for unrestricted funding. And Audrey here is just letting us know that yes, she's still in the audience. So
good.
thank you.
Yeah, it's critical. It really, what I'll say, Valerie, and to Audrey, I guess,
Hmm.
is oftentimes like, organizations get to a certain point. Um, oh, actually, I have the stat. I know it from the top of my head.
Hmm.
The last stat I saw was that 77% of nonprofits never reach $1 million.
Wow.
And then 91% never reach 5 million. It's getting to
Wow.
be a little bit of an old stat, but like it hasn't changed that much.
Hmm.
So I say that because I find that when organizations either are kind of bumping up to that $1 million mark or even that $5 million mark, 91%,
Hmm.
um, it's way more about their growth, the ability to grow is way more about the spend that they can make and the investment they can make in the engine to keep them growing than the fundraising.
Hmm.
And so often it's just like we need new fundraising things, but it's really about are we investing in the things that help us make more money or help us raise more money effectively? And you cannot do that if you do not have unrestricted revenue or general operating revenue.
Hmm.
Um, it's like if everything is coming in restricted, or even if 80% is coming in restricted, it is simply not enough. And so I really feel, I told those stats because I really feel like people were kind of bumping up to one of those thresholds. The pivot into unrestricted giving and really investing and learning how to do that is critical.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm glad you're listening in, Audrey, today.
Awesome, awesome. And for those of our listeners who may not necessarily understand what restricted versus unrestricted funds are, can you just give a
Yeah,
short definition?
sure. I mean, at the highest level,
Mhm.
restricted is like the money needs to be used for this exact purpose.
Mhm.
I'll use a very transactional example of I'm going to give you $50,000 for a new school bus, a thing, or a specific something.
Mhm.
But like it doesn't pay for the driver of the school bus, the maintenance of the school bus, the person who has to go and price check 4 different school buses. Like it's not paying for the administration always for the school bus.
Mhm.
Unrestricted would be here's $50,000. You're the business owner. You know the biggest need. Invest it as you see fit.
Hmm,
Huge difference.
yeah, and that I'm curious now. Are you aware of any studies that suggest that when funders actually give unrestricted gifts versus the restricted, that organizations can actually increase their growth much faster?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a documented study to point to, but I got to tell you, it's what I live every day.
Okay.
It's when organizations learn how to lead donors to unrestricted gifts, learn how to
Mhm.
present, the need in a certain way, learn how to really answer and lean into these tough questions that we sometimes avoid.
Right.
Um, Donors understand it. And so, like I always say, well, let's pause a second and think, who are these stakeholder level donors? Who are these investment level donors? Well, they're also people running businesses in the community. They're also entrepreneurs. They're also visionary leaders. Um, they're also scaling businesses. And so I really look at it as the opportunity to speak their language,
Mhm.
to say, hey, this is how I'm scaling my business. Yes, it's mission based. Yes, it's a nonprofit. But this is how we're doing this. And it's such an opportunity to speak CEO to CEO. And they get that because guess what? They all have marketing budgets. They
Right.
all have to equip their sales team to do things. They have to spend money to make money. They get to spend 30, 40% sometimes on expenses to make millions more. And
Mhm.
so they get it.
Right.
But so long somewhere along the way, we've said like, oh, they're not going to give to us if we tell them, our programs are not 90% or over. My experience is opposite. My experience is when you do it right,
Mhm.
donors say, oh my gosh, that makes sense. The math makes sense.
Mhm.
Wow, I don't hear this from other people. Huh? Like, you're being really transparent with me right now.
Mhm.
And they give more money. And so my clients, donors give more money when they have a deep understanding of the true financial need and
Mhm.
how their investment can best be spent.
And it's so funny, and this is totally, totally, totally unrelated. But as you were talking, I had the image of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, there you go.
How, everybody was afraid of the Wizard of Oz, and they found out, he was a normal man, put his pants on one leg
Yeah,
at a time, just like everybody else.
right, right. These are just normal people. Um, and I'd also say that I love that you brought that up because I think sometimes it's like, well, I don't know. I was a social worker and I'm leading a nonprofit, or I was a medical professional. Like I've never sat in the room with the CEO of a company and asked for money. But like a lot of my coaching it's just best for you to show up not as some fundraising version of yourself, or not like, we got to be extra professional because I'm with the CEO or some big, some very successful business person. That never plays well. Like I just want fundraisers showing up authentically, showing up as you.
Hmm.
And really, and I always do this to say, like, just show up on even territory. You're
Yeah.
not you're not begging for money, and you're not saying, give me money. You're really offering an amazing opportunity for them to invest in an amazing mission, an
Hmm.
amazing work, and amazing people. And so there's so much money psychology and mindset work and fundraising. And I think sometimes we avoid these conversations with people who we think are fancy or like wealthy, and like we're afraid to have that real honest conversation with them. But they're dying to have that conversation with you. They're dying for you to say, can I get your insight on this? Or can I share with you our financial need? Because could I walk you through it? They're dying for that information, and nobody does.
Yep, yep, yep. And that's what makes you Sherry, and
Oh,
that makes you Sherry, and the rest of us, the rest of us. So
oh my goodness. Well, we can end it right there. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's so funny.
oh, awesome. So, too, I was looking on your website,
Yeah,
and what I loved is you have a tool that you can download. It's part of a booklet.
I
It's an
do.
assessment tool to help nonprofit organizations test their financing model. And I'm reading because
Yeah,
I
sure.
have all of it. And one of the first things you suggest is that leaders pivot the organization as well as the staff and strategy from fragmented fundraising to a true financing plan that attracts investment level donors. So, first of all, what's an investment level donor?
In essence, it's a major donor. What I mean by that is, it's somebody who really like. supporting your organization, it's a win-win. This is a shared, it's not the terrible stories we hear of like the funder came in and said we had to do this with the money. We don't want any of that.
Right.
This is a partnership. This is us. We've taken the time to build a relationship. They really want to invest in the growth, in the scaling, in the overhead of the organization, because we've taken the time to really help them understand that and help them educate that. And so I'll say investment level donors, because really those are our top 10, top 30 donors. I want our top 30 donors yielding between 50 and 75% of your revenue.
Wow.
That's what I call investment level donors. Those donors aren't giving as a result of a great appeal, a cool event, a grant proposal. They're giving because we have a relationship with them and we're sitting down and we're soliciting them. And so kind of that difference between what I call like a true financing plan and fundraising plan is really rooted in that. Here's an example of what I mean. As you can imagine, Valerie, right now I'm sending lots of interviews for people who are hiring fundraisers. I do that with my clients to make sure they get the right people on the bus. And an example of that would be, if I'm hiring a high-level development director, which is the hardest hire, I really do feel like it's the hardest hire.
Yeah.
And I'm asking, how are you, if the organization is growing from 5 million to 6 million this year, what's your approach? How do you plan? I'm asking how are you ensuring you're bringing in the overall revenue to actually reach or exceed that number? And so often that answer, and frankly, sometimes how we approach that is it's kind of down into the tactics where it's segment, but then it's, we kind of go into, we do grant proposals, we do events, we do appeals, we do campaigns, all important things. Don't hear me say I don't like them, but I want to know that your lead fundraiser knows how to take the organization's true financial need and knows how to put it into a funding model, knows the org chart that would support that funding model, and can drive that. I want to know that they know how to grow gifts from 5K to 50K. I want to know that they are the exact path to securing those top 30 donors. Because those things are not happening by a lot of the traditional siloed fundraising activities. Nobody's major donor is giving their best gift at your gala.
Right.
No one's. Or because that appeal was really great and they're cute. There's a wonderful photo on the front. No one is giving their best gift. So I want to know that anybody who's running my fundraising department really understands like the business objectives and then how I'm aligning all my activities to that. And so we've talked a lot about that today, but that's really what I see as the difference between the two. Then you know what fundraising things to do and what your fundraising plan should look like. But it's really just, that high ROI fundraising, which is why I start with that.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. So you just answered really my next question.
Sorry about that.
No. That's a good segue. What are some of the questions? Just like, when you're interviewing people who are looking for the top development position, those are the same questions that nonprofits should be asking as they transition from the traditional model. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Traditional model to the long-term financing model.
Right. Yeah. I mean, is it great that your development director knows how to write grant proposals, has planned events, has done campaigns, has kind of killed it on Giving Tuesday? Yeah, it is great, but that doesn't none of those things fully fund your organization.
Right.
Yeah.
To what I'm hearing too between the lines is it sounds like the mindset is going from transactional to relational.
Yeah.
With the investment.
You're right. And and even you like saying that back to me, like it's like we hear that all the time. Like what in the world, what does that really mean? Again, I think it goes back to the time allocation because and I love giving examples as part of this, but like So often, even if you think of family foundation, and I know some family foundations, they don't want to talk to us, but some actually would have relationships with us. But we're busy and we're doing all the things, and they're a foundation. And so often I'll say, okay, so I noticed this family foundation's giving you $10,000 every year for the past 5 years. A, that's great. But B, we haven't grown that gift. Like, what's going on? And so often I'll say, well, how did we respond to the last gift? What did we do?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get, well, they don't require any reporting. They don't. There's nothing. Like, they just send us a check. I was like, well, that's why the gift isn't growing, right? Um, so like looking at things and saying, where are we just like, all right, it's October again. I know you gave us 10. Could we submit for 15? Like, that's transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Um, us getting the gift and then really planning out what should that donor experience be, even though they're a foundation. How could we really exceed their expectations? How could we get to know them better? How can we make sure that this really is a win-win relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what could we be doing? Not crazy, but like, what could we be doing that, like, when all the applications come in next year, like ours kind of makes it to the top of the stack. And so, like, even just this, like, let's treat people more like humans, even though there might be an application or another huge area. I could go off. We'll do another segment on this, but um, would be like a traditional corporate sponsorship for an event.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a win-win for that corporation? If it is, great. But I worked all of 2020 and 2021 to help my clients move their corporate sponsors over to relationship-based gift, over to like, we just call them and we have a discussion and we get money. And I had people's $50,000 gala sponsorships turn into $100,000 unrestricted
Wow.
gifts
Awesome.
because we removed the transaction from it. And it was, truth be told, a lot of people were like, "Well, we don't get much out of the gala sponsorship anyhow, or the golf sponsorship." But what we did realize is, like, actually our missions are like, their mission for giving is our mission. So why aren't we serving them in more of a relationship based pattern, as opposed to like, it's golf time again? And
Mm.
so there's so much money. I wish people could see the money that I see sitting on the table and that my clients are able to harvest, because they've really slowed things down
Mm-hmm.
and have laid the relationship on top of it, which is the key. You've nailed it, Valerie.
Okay. Awesome. All right. And then, the next thing you suggest is that organizations align their development staff's time. And I think you kind of touched on that
Mm-hmm.
with the financing plan to achieve a high return on investment model. So I guess a basic question is, what are some of the things you're investing in order to raise money, right?
Yeah,
What are some of the costs, right? And then how do you actually calculate that ROI or return on investment?
yeah. So again, like, I always go back to my financing plan, and I'm really looking at
Mm-hmm.
um, each role, each person, how they're, if we want, well, if we want 50% of our revenue to come in from these two lines, um, gosh, I at least want 50% of my staff's time going to that.
Right.
And so it really is you know what it is? It's an exercise of, what are the things we need to stop doing
Mm-hmm.
so we can take that time and start doing, I would say, more efficient things, or things that yield higher dollar amounts. One of the concerns people have when we start working is like, I can't add anything more to my schedule. Like, what's she going to make me do? Um, and I said, yeah, actually, I don't have any concern about that, because it really is an analysis of, these fundraising activities got us to this point,
Mm-hmm.
but now we need to end some of those and take those hours and move them. So it's really more like a shift of our allocation versus we got to add 50 more things to our plate.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are not planning like this, if you skip this step, um, it's hard to hold your staff accountable to this. if we're all not tuned into this, if your development director doesn't understand this, if your ED doesn't understand this, it is hard to hold people accountable when you're like, why is this line not growing? We said we were going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, I know, but I'm busy over here doing social media, or like we had this or this event. And so it really is hard to set healthy metrics and hold teams accountable if we don't have the numbers to back up what a high ROI fundraising model and team would look like.
Mm-hmm.
I'll also say, can I bring the board into this, Valerie?
Oh, yes, yes.
I should bring them into this. Um, this is critical for the board because I find that so often, like if a board member has 1 hour outside of a meeting to do fundraising, what do we want that 1 hour to be? We want it to be, we want it to yield the highest amount of money, right? We want it to be a step in larger gift, right? I mean, all size gifts are important. All size gifts are important. You can tweet that. Um, However, um, if we want to grow, we want to do all these things. I want to make sure the board understands what do the activities look like? How would I plug myself in to a step on a major donor's experience versus a grassroots experience? And so I want my board members participating in that top 30, that top 50 type of arena. Even if they say they don't know you know, larger donors, they don't know any major donors. I want them helping the team, taking a step in that donor experience, meeting for coffee, calling with an impact report, whatever it is. I want their hours aligned to that too. It's not just the team. I want to make sure that any hour a board member is giving is also yielding the best results. And so, I think a lot of money is left on the table because our teams and our boards, they mean well, but especially our boards, they're experts at something else.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they don't know. And so they're like, I need to fundraise, so let me go to Facebook, or let me, do something transactional when their time would be better spent participating in relationships with these stakeholders, being part of that donor experience, really helping think through, more the mid and top level part of the pyramid.
Okay, awesome. So I guess what I'm hearing from you, or I think I heard earlier on in the conversation, is if board members and leadership don't necessarily have this comfort around establishing those relationships, you're there to help coach them through that process so that they can become the ambassador, whether they have done this stuff or not.
That's a good way
you're
to phrase it.
you're able to help them navigate.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the best parts of my job is, maybe you feel this way too, Valerie, is like, um, I do get to work with people with all sorts of different backgrounds, with all different types of skill sets, and they've found themselves in nonprofit, and they've found themselves in fundraising. And it's like, how did I get here? Um, we all have part of that story.
Yes.
Um, and so I'm used to people saying, "Oh, but I don't know about that, or I've never done that, or I'm shy about that. I don't want to come off as pushy or begging or all the things."
Yeah.
Um, that's really, I will tell people, like, that's really our own issue. Um, if you really do believe that your mission is worthy of people supporting, and it is, your
Mm-hmm.
mission's amazing. Everybody's listening. Your mission's amazing. Um, we have to remove the money part from this, because your job is to share the need, share the plan, share the need, and ask for that need, and ask people to invest in an amazing mission. And so often we get in the way. We think we're doing it wrong. We think we're going to be pushy. We think our friends are going to like us if we ask them for money. But you're really offering your friends an amazing opportunity to invest in something that is changing lives, or has helped us these last 3 years, or whatever that
Mm-hmm.
end result is. And so, yeah, I do lots of coaching with board and EDs and development directors who like aren't traditional fundraisers, and they might even tell me they hate it.
Right.
And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't like what you think fundraising is.
Right.
But if you actually learn what it is and learn that it is actually just like being friendly and nice and like sharing the need and asking for that, like it actually becomes much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of money mindset work. I will tell you, Valerie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe you. And we got time for one more question.
Yeah.
I don't see that anyone has any questions. If you are listening in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to post. And in the meantime, I guess my question to you, Sherry, is what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the
Mm.
way?
Mm. Um, the lessons I've learned along the way, and I probably say this for even for my own business,
Mm-hmm.
as well as what I would say to my client,
Mm-hmm.
is the best fundraisers I've coached, and I've talked a little bit about this today, is um, when you just show up as yourself.
Mm.
I have this funny phrase I use. I'm like, just be human, like be
Yeah.
human in that email, be human in that phone call. And what I'm really trying to say is like, just don't don't think you have to be some version of yourself for people to give you money.
Right.
Um, I always tell people, I'm going to go meet with this big donor. It's a first meeting. Like it's the pressure. It's all the things. It's like I say, hold on, hold on. Like I'm going to ask you one question when you're done with this meeting, and that question is, did they like you? We're not asking that person for money. We're not like putting all this pressure on the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Did they like you? Because it takes 81% of donors 6 months to 24 months to give that gift. So guess what? You got to get meeting number 2, and you're not going to get it if they don't like you. And the only like reason they're going to like you is if you showed up as yourself
Right.
and you listened and you talked and you have a funny laugh. It's like it came out, and if you were just human. And so I think even for myself, like this is me. I show up. I talk. I talk with my hands, and I say silly things sometimes, or belly laugh, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just me though, and that's the authentic me, and that's who you work with. When you work with me, and I want my fundraisers to do the same thing. I want it to become so natural that that scariness and that like I hate fundraising goes away because it's just them showing up in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I think all leaders need to just show up as themselves and really kind of pull away some of the masks that we wear
Yep.
in so many areas of our lives because people can't connect with you when you have those masks on.
Okay. Awesome. And I had to laugh when you said belly laugh. That's how I laugh, and
Oh, good.
I always end up apologizing because
No,
when I came of age professionally, that was just not the professional
right.
thing.
It wasn't professional, right? I learned a lot of this. I took a really amazing Tracy Goodwin. She's a voice coach, but it's not like singing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really like how do you use your voice to show up as yourself? How do I not turn into professional voice, and how do I actually just like let me come out?
Right.
And part of that is your laugh and just acting, human or normal. And so I say let that belly laugh out, Valerie. Let it come to the forefront.
You'll be sorry.
Love
Oh,
it.
okay. All righty. So thank you so much, Sherry. We have learned a lot. Thank you so much for your time. I made it a point to, um, I'm thinking this is your contact information. If there's a better way to
That's
contact
great.
you, let me know. But I thought that I would use your website
Thank you.
and then let people, sign up for a consultation with you and really, really understand, how you work. What I
Happy
really
to.
loved is you've got this assessment that people can take and do a reality check. And then I'm assuming that they can take the assessment, go over the results with you and take it from there. Is that how that
Yeah.
works?
Just reach out. I don't bite. You can do that on my website, or I'm on LinkedIn every day, as you know, Valerie.
Yes.
It's my #1 channel. I post everything on first. So connect with me there, shoot me a DM, and we can talk.
Okay. Awesome. Alrighty. So I don't see any more questions or comments. Again, I want to say thank you, everybody who
Thank
stopped
you.
through. And thank you, Sherry. You're awesome. Always has been awesome.
No, thank you. Back at you. I feel like we're old LinkedIn friends, and we finally got to do this. So thanks
Yeah.
for the opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. All right. I'm
Have a
gonna
good rest of your day.
you too.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. All right. Bye bye.